in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What a pity. Tomorrow never certain. What dwells behind the curtain? The face of evil smirking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, could either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannons could breach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 91 D1VOC. Yes. That phenomena, okay? Yeah. I know you don't like that word phenomena, Polymath. That phenomenon that has been affecting us since 2020. Okay, and we're approaching the end of 2021, and there are many things that have been said by many people, viewed through a variety of lenses and prisms and whatnot. And we're going to talk today by, shall we say, we're going to talk through the lens of comparison of different countries. Country A, country B, mortality rates, whom is getting infected by the 91 D1VOC, and what does this tell us about what we should do, or how do we interpret the data to begin with? Okay? Does that make sense, Polymath? Is that more or less what we're doing? Or is there anything else to add to the overall general picture, Doctor?
Yeah, there is obviously a lot more to add to the general picture, and that's going to be more pertaining to how and what we'll do after this whole situation. How governments change rules, structures, passports. You know, an example is what I'm thinking at the end of this whole event. Passports are now going to be more centralized. They're going to be like a database of all passports with the site of vaccination someone's had for yellow fever, co-fleet, or any other type of disease, as well as other kind of information that is going to be held in a world-centric database. I believe this is going to happen in the next 6 or 7 years, probably less, maybe even 4. But that is going to be one of the aftermaths. Ability to control immediately at the at the haste of any sort of outbreak. What the thing is, in the beginning, we had a little conversations I've had with you. Pardon my co-fleet, but I had this conversation about why is it that terrorists don't use bio weapons to attack people? Why is it that it's simply just physical, mechanical weapons? Bioweapons seem to be reasonable in the sense that, hey, you can affect a whole large number of people, find something that's contagious. And the point here is, this is going to be done by people, right? Once people know how something is done, of course, they're not going to do it on purpose. So the point here is, governments are going to want to be able to control this whole circumstance. If one country is affected, they must be able to easily close down the ranks, track everyone and their medical history, vaccinations, as well as, diseases, etc. Hence, a centralized passport system. Some of these people who think a little bit too much might say that it's going to be some microchip, etc. But that's not so relevant whether it's a microchip or not. Point is, it's going to be digitized database based on crypto technology. Again, it's going to be based on #256 encryption. So this is going to be a very interesting thing. So someone can't even fake all these certifications, etc. Because you're going to be able to track every single transaction that has occurred within your person.
You're funny. You just keep going on and on. My God. So, right. the whole yet another reason for the mark of the beast, right? Yet another reason for them to do what they shall inevitably do anyways. These self-fulfilling prophecies, like, okay, well, there is a general tendency for the world to become more centralized, for things to become more centralized in terms of the government and so on and so forth, at least in particular areas. Why decentralization happens in some areas, centralization happens in other areas. There's power being given to the individual in some ways through technology, and then power being taken away from the individual in some ways through the same exact technology, seemingly. Yeah, at some point it becomes a matter of interpretation. But if I'll ask one question before we go into the meat and potatoes of this, which is to begin with the data. But let me ask this question: what are your thoughts regarding this centralization of power, the mark of the beast, one world passport, whatever it may be? Okay, in terms of good thing or bad thing? Because I already said that. Look, there's some kind of self-fulfilling prophecy aspect to it. There's some kind of, hey, if you look at it with a certain prism, you can say centralization. You look at it with another prism, you say, hey, it's decentralization and power to the people. But is this a bad thing? Because it definitely has a bad connotation, does it not?
Is it a bad thing? I think that's a misnomer for a question. I don't think the question makes sense. Is it a good or bad thing? This is just evolution. You know, if you think that humans learning technology is a bad thing because social interactions reduced in the way that we used to do back in the days in savannah, then yeah, it's a bad thing for you. But for me, I like the technology. I like the ability to not have to be held stringent at a tribe just because they don't like me for some reason. I can find a new tribe, right? Online. So is it a good or bad
Okay.
thing?
Centralization vis-a-vis specifically political centralization with governments, one world government, new world order.
It's gonna
Okay.
okay,
That's
so
highly contextualized already. Is that a bad thing?
okay, so let's answer it through a lens, right? Of a tentative lens. It will reduce wars. There will be less wars in the world if everything is centralized. These so-called governments can control people from fighting each other as often. So yeah, it will make the world more peaceful. It will
Good.
also create the
People don't
potential for
like. Go ahead. Go ahead.
it would also create the potential for chaos in that some people won't like it and there will be always like a resistance. Like we've seen all these movies, the resistance, you know, in like Terminator, etc. But yeah, in general, there's going to be peace. And if you value peace, then yes, it's a good thing for centralizations to occur.
If you value peace, it's a good thing for centralizations to occur. Um, I believe it was Tolstoy that said, "Why the hell do human beings think they want peace?" You know, that if you were in a room plied with all the food and drink that you wanted and all the peace, that we would flip the table at some point just so something can happen, right? And
Yeah.
I think people don't want to be stopped from fighting each other. Okay, people don't want a centralized truth, right? A centralized order, that is, right? Tentative, right? Use your language. But people don't want that. People rather be clothed in their false certainties so that they can turn to the other person that has another false certainty and say, the blue people over there, the red people over there. And then they can start to feel bonds with each other against someone else, because if you don't have those bonds, if there's this one global order, that you don't feel the bond. Because my contention is a lot of that bonding is a bonding against, not necessarily that
Okay.
we are not looking for one world human family. That's not what we're looking for.
You're right, but then we have Pfizer and Moderna and GlaxoSmithKline, meaning there's going to be drugs that's given to us in order to repress some of these impetuses. We're going to be
Gotcha.
drugged up so that we don't
Brave
fight
New
each other.
World, Brave New World. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Brave New World, which is the definite, was the better, shall we say, prediction, better than the 1984 prediction, which was more brute
Mm-hmm.
force and so on and so forth, right?
All right. We already seen it. I
So
mean, this whole everyone taking this vaccine for a disease that doesn't statistically affect them, right? Governments which have countries which isn't statistically affecting them taking it. This is stipulated in Brave New World 1984 kind of stuff. So this Mark of the Beast 1984 Brave New World stuff is all happening in real time. We are stuck in a zeitgeist, you know, aka spirit of the times, where we are literally seeing the unfolding of the masses being drugged up by the media. First, the media was used to drug all of us into this frenzy, to a point whereby we just believe in the hysteresis of this whole thing. It's hysterical. But yes, Moderna, GlaxoSmithKline, Pfizer, this is our saviors. Once we have this peace, they're the ones that's going to be allowing us to not throw the table and break things. Why? Entropy, right? Humans, like any other thing in existence, in this, so-called universe, are entropic beings, meaning we can't be ordered because we have electrons in our bodies that want to be disordered because of obviously energy. So the point here is, no matter how good you have it, humans will always want to fight. But if you have a nice drugged up situation where someone can just feel, their hormones can be regularized, that's it. Well, New World Order, huh? The Christians were right. The mark of the beast is here. And, perhaps for my PhD, I helped invent a way to power these microchips. So, hey, maybe don't come.
Hold on 1 second. I thought you were going to find a perfect segue there because there was a perfect segue for you to get into the statistics, but you NE people don't know how to stop yourselves. Get into the statistics then. What's the data? I'm sharing something in your screen. Go ahead. Let's go.
Yeah, so this is the water meter stats. This data here specifically is from New York City on May 2020. So this is when the virus was at its most deadliest, I guess, in general. So I'm going to use this data. There's other data here as well from, different times and ratios. So we'll start with sex. And so obviously, as you can see here, there's a ratio between 62% and 38%. Basically, it kills more men than it does women by quite a huge difference, right? Now, this is interesting. I think in general, in nature, women are actually more saved from brutal diseases than men are. We don't really need to go into that. You can probably guess why, right? Because they carry children and, all that stuff. Their genes need to be a bit more clean. Anyways, that's not so relevant. Let's go through the stats of the age. So if you see here, right, this is percentages based on age of people who it affects the most. This is not the percentage of deaths. That's a whole different thing. This is percentages based on age of people who die from this disease. So you can see that 0 to 17 is.
Hold on a second. You didn't say percentage of deaths. You said percentage of people affected, and then you said deaths.
Oh, sorry.
Can you clarify what this
percentages,
is?
This is the percent from the people who died. This is the breakdown of the percentages of age of that distribution of death. So from 6,839 people who died, right? This is now the breakdown of basically how many people in each age category died in the percentage form. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So you can see that basically if you're under 17, it's 0.04% of the death. So that's 0.04 of the less than 1%. That's extremely, basically it means statistically, this is not even something to consider, right? It's not. 1844 is slightly higher at 4.5%. Again, this is 4.5% of the so-called 1%. Still pretty low. So you can see that it actually starts affecting people at age 45 and above. And the distribution here is highest at 75 plus. So you can clearly see that if you're an old nigga, it's going to kill you statistically significantly more than if you're a young nigga. So the thing here is the hysterical kind of nature where everyone is worried about something that statistically doesn't affect the age group is something that's filled with mass hysteria over there. Doesn't, take precautions on how you feel, but in general, this disease is killing old people. What they'll tell you is, oh, but there was this one person who died, like for example, out of 6,839 people, 3 17-year-olds died, right? Do you know how ridiculous that number is? And these 3 17-year-olds probably had issues with their health, such as asthma or some underlying health disease,
There are a few things that get you this exercised. I notice. I don't think I've ever found anything else that gets you going like this. Why this one? I'm just curious.
I think it's the fact that people are willing to believe in the severity of something when the numbers are so clearly right in front of them and they still can't see it. You explain it to them, you show them, but they just can't see it. You can tell people to be wary of STDs or even HIV and other kind of diseases, and they seem to care less by their action than they do this when they've believed in the spirit that told them that this is perhaps the worst, deadliest thing that's ever happened. People were less taking precaution when Ebola was outbreak in Africa than they do care about this COVID, at least the middle class. They talk more about it. There's more of a sense of danger that is, imperative. I find it insane when the numbers are so clearly in front of you, but for some reason, people's actions, forget the actions, because I don't even come for people's actions, right? Do whatever you want. But the mindset behind the action is flawed. I just don't
Okay,
quite understand that
mindset.
logic.
I'm assuming, therefore, that you have a lot of anecdotal evidence because I know about the mindset as far as the media and governments go. I know about the closed borders and the regulations and the closed embassies and the blah, 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 blah
Let me
for
give you an
almost 2 years
example.
now, right? But you seem to be talking about regular people. I'm a recluse, so you tell me, what are you seeing out there?
I go to meetings such as like restaurants to drink coffee, and people are telling me, "Have you taken your vaccine?" I'm like, I don't need a vaccine for a
Hmm.
disease that statistically doesn't affect me. I've not taken a vaccine for yellow fever, which in this country is something that statistically is going to affect me and probably kill me. I
And
haven't
you're in
taken a
East
vaccine
Africa, right?
for Right, correct. I haven't taken a vaccine for cholera, typhoid, malaria, or any of these diseases. I haven't taken a vaccine for flu. So why are we having a conversation whether I've taken a vaccine
Hmm.
for a disease that isn't even statistically in the country? This is now the madness, and it gets worse. The country tried to put, I think it was overruled by the High Court, an injunction, or there's an injunction by the High Courts which stopped the country from basically saying that if you don't have a vaccine, you can't access public services, meaning you can't go to public buildings. This is the madness that I'm seeing right in front of me. And whenever
Hmm.
people fight against it, they tend to fight against this whole um, thing from a draconian perspective, meaning we're tired of all these measures. These are draconian, these are tyrannical. Instead of the simple statistical argument that they could clearly make, they're focused on the freedom, or we're tired of being indoors, we're tired of this. Okay, I get what you're saying, but you could actually make a far more clean argument if you just looked at the numbers and said, hey, look, I am 17 years old, or I am 25-year old. I don't have any health issues. I'm not statistically in the bracket that's going to be dangerous. Let me go out and do whatever I want. Now, someone might say, hey, we've got to protect those people who have underlying health problems. Well, those people can stay indoors. You,
Okay,
you see the, you
so
see the, right.
your exercise about the sheep, like it's almost like the very when it's this stark about zeros and ones, things that are,
Mm,
because there are nuances to different things, and you talked about people's actions, and you do what you want. We all have preferred states, right? One can say those kinds of things, but when it's like this, black and white, and people are exhibiting this kind of behavior, it does, it does kind of smear all over your face something which you already knew, right? You already
yes.
know that people are like this, right? I mean, like, okay. So specifically, therefore, with regards to Africa, if you will, there's something that, and I don't want to go too long but there is something about that whole Western medicine which people seem to have swallowed hook, line, and sinker.
Mm,
So
yeah.
speak to that, and also speak to perhaps the cultural aspect. Um, Explain what cultures that are more FE dominated, and because the my limited anecdotal experience with people whom tend to intelligent people now, okay, because I'm not, you know, people way above average intelligence that are asking me about the vaccine and things like that, that these people are very FE people to begin with, that I've already known that about them. Africa, with regards to FE culture and regards to swallowing hook, line, and sinker, the whole Western medicine. Go.
Right. So let me go and let me just make a slight point to a point I made earlier. So earlier I said the 17-year-olds probably had underlying health conditions. So there was three deaths out of the 6,839, and all three of them had underlying health conditions. So, anyways, so let me go and answer that question over there. That's an interesting little gem that I just saw there in the screen. Um, so, what is FE culture? FE culture means extroverted feeling, and it's a culture, like let's say a country or a person can kind of have this culture within themselves, is more based on niceties, communalisms, basically everyone having this shared experience where you're trying to kind of maintain peace, maintain, kind of niceties, pleasantries, and not pleasantries necessarily being nice, but pleasantries in the sense that you want to share what you have with the other person. Let's say you're a girl, you want to borrow lipstick from the other girl. You're like, hey, can I borrow lipstick? The girl gives it to you. Then it's like, oh yeah, you can have it back. You look nice too. It's that kind of back and forth banter, where you're trying to kind of create a pleasant experience for everyone. And sometimes it can come at a cost of truth itself, because if you don't want to brutally state something, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I was saying, that was a nice picture that you painted. Girl gives the other girl lipstick, put it on. They're like, oh yeah, you can keep it, and you look good, and da da da. That kind of a thing where people want to
Hmm.
have that kind of shared space. Now,
Right.
to help us define in terms of opposition, what would be the opposite of that? Because is the opposite, sociopathic serial killers out there, or or what would be the opposite of FE? Is the FE culture more the opposite of FI culture? What is it?
No, I'll say the opposite of FE would be something like TE culture. TE culture is something
It's
like
about what gets done. Okay, go ahead.
exactly
The
extroverted thinking,
Germans.
which is the Germans, the Japanese. All the Japanese is TE
Mhm.
ingrained in FE, but
Facts don't care
still,
about
that's
your
a very
feelings.
interesting one, right?
Okay.
It's all
Facts
about
don't care about your feelings is
get
the opposite. Good, 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 good.
yeah, get things done, right?
Yeah, yeah, good, 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 yeah. Because I think that puts that way people can really balance out the picture in their heads with regards to what we're talking about here. There's on the one hand Japanese, German, Ben Shapiro, and then on the other hand you have people sharing lipstick together and
Hmm.
willing to let all kinds of facts go swept under the rug as long as
Yes.
the lipstick gets shared equally, right?
Hmm.
So continue with regards to how this then affects that conversation that you're having at this coffee spot.
Yeah, so obviously, so what this means, an example is this is you can't quite talk about some topics cleanly, right? It means actually people are willing to allow the other people to go off and say things which they know is wrong. Like let's say tribalism, right? They might be arguing with someone and someone is mentioning something which they know is wrong, but because they know if they mention something, especially if it's to do with different tribes, and those two people are from different tribes, and who they're going to vote for or why they should vote for this other person, they're not going to say the truth as they truly want it in general, because it's going to cause conflict. And they don't want to actually have that conflict in a social setting. At home, they'll have all the conflict that they want with their tribes. They'll say, oh, the other tribe is like this, right? Because again, it's more FE, right? They've come together now into a group and now they're fighting against the other group. But the point of FE is to kind of create a pleasant experience for everybody involved in that moment. So it kind of makes it difficult for you to truly dissect information, the bullshit that people say, and actually come to a solution.
Western medicine, how come? Do you have any hypotheses as to why? Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? Over here that I've been in Africa, people have keep asking me to go hospital every time I have a cold or some flu-like symptom, and I'm like, no, I'm not gonna see a chemist. First of all, I technically am, right? But I'm not gonna go see a chemist. I'm not gonna go waste my money to go to a hospital when I have a cold, and I'm not gonna go see a doctor every time my body doesn't feel right, because in my understanding is I have an understanding of how my body works to a degree. If I have an eye problem, of course I'm going to go see a doctor. If I have some kind
Hmm.
of pain in my bowels, there's some things which, yes,
Hmm.
you can self-diagnose to a point where you realize, yeah, of course I need to go see someone. But the
Hmm.
culture over here is that they truly believe in medicine to the point whereby they think if you don't see a doctor, you're not going to get better. I've had comments like, but I told them I don't go to hospitals, I don't take drugs, right? I don't do drugs, by the way. I don't do any medicine unless again I heart certain things like that. Of course I'll take medicine, like beta blockers, all that stuff. When I tell people I don't take drugs, they're like, but how do you get better? Or if I tell them I don't go to hospitals, they're like, but you'll die. They literally think I'm going to die because I have a bad cough and I don't want to see a doctor. And they believe it, as in these people have this innate belief in Western medicine. It's almost religious. They really believe that there's something special, when in reality, you probably are going to get better because people generally get better. The hospital didn't actually help. And they don't dissect thinking, the doctor didn't really do anything. And they trust drugs as well. They really trust them. And these drugs don't even work. A lot of them are from India and Pakistan, and these are the reject drugs. Anyways.
Okay. Yes. And let's not speculate too much as to why. Perhaps you
Although
have.
that's the real question you asked, though, isn't it? I didn't quite answer it.
Well, do you have any simple sentences
Yes.
as to why you think that's the case?
I think in general, the African trusts the white man, since the white man had superior technology when he invaded Africa. So he imparted himself as Jesus Christ, the image of himself as superior. So I think this goes ingrained. Anything that is Western, they embrace. Anything that's Eastern, or I guess in this case, the global West. I think no, is it the global South? Yeah, the new term is the global South for the non-Western countries. Anything that's traditional, they really reject, even if it's functional, which I don't get. Right? It doesn't make sense.
Gotcha. So you have an FE culture with a propensity to be superstitious, even though they still have that propensity to be superstitious.
Yes.
They just apply it now to something else. And okay, you come over, someone comes over, they dominate you, and perhaps you see that some of the things that some of the maladies that were affecting your population were cured by their interventions, and then now you kind of believe it whole cloth. So let's go back to the data and compare now in terms of country to country, because what we've looked at, we talk about the distribution when it comes to sex. We talk about now deaths also when it comes to age, and we've seen certain things that don't make a lot of sense. Now let's compare in terms of countries. And while you go there, if you could segue this into your segue from here, age and the fact that, shall we say, people tend to be affected by certain things more the older they get, seems to be this. Is there evolutionary explanation in the sense that, hey, if you're past a certain age and you've passed on your seed to the next generation, maybe the body doesn't need to be fighting so hard. I don't know if there are any thoughts, if you have any thoughts about that, and then you go into the population, the different countries, and see how the distribution happens over there.
Yeah, so we'll start off with the distribution and we'll go on to that more woo stuff. So, pardon my cold feet. Anyway, so let's go through here. So this is some data from this website that they claim they got it from World Health Organization, World Bank, UNESCO, CIA, and individual countries database. I have checked the one for Nigeria; it's accurate. And I've checked the one for America, it's accurate also. Anyway, so if you look at here, this is a deaths and then percentage and then the rate meaning, and then the rank. Rank is basically means that Nigeria, based on the percentage of the population and everything, they had the most deaths from influenza, so the flu, and pneumonia in 2018, right? So basically what they're trying to say is Nigeria, in that 1 year, ranked the highest deaths for their population. 286,619 people died from flu and pneumonia. Now, let's compare this. This is 2018, and there was no mass hysteria in Nigeria to try to reduce this number because this is outrageous. Now, let's look at the COVID deaths in Nigeria since 2020, or I guess late 2019 to now. That's 2 or so years. As you can see, here it is. Since 2019, the end of 2019, Nigeria has had only 2,000. I say only as a numerical figure, so please don't come for me. 2,983 deaths. So if you compare 2,983 deaths compared to 288,619, you can clearly see that COVID is not an issue in Nigeria, not at all. Now, obviously, some of the reasons why is because COVID targets old people with underlying
And
health
Nigeria
conditions like the
has
flu.
what's the population of Nigeria? Nigeria has has a substantial
Is
population,
it
right? It's the most populous
is it
country
over
in Africa, right?
200, maybe 160 million, or is it
I
200 million?
I believe close to 200. I know America is over 300 million, right? And I
Right.
think that Nigeria is quite up there as well. So
Yes.
just to give people context in terms of the
Yeah,
numbers.
it's going to be around, I think it's around 200 million. Ethiopia is about 110. So that's how usually I know. Yeah, I believe it's around 200 or so million people. Right. So the point, yeah, so out of 200 million people, it's only 2,983 people dying from COVID. This is not even, as in, there's more people dying from border accidents than will ever die from COVID in Nigeria. So, but the issue is the Nigerian government and some of the people, the middle class people, are going around discussing about this event.
206
And I'm talking
million.
about
Go ahead.
right. So we were accurate. Yeah, there's 206 million people, and only 3,000 people died from this disease. This is ridiculous. It shouldn't even be in the conversation. It should be yes. There's a way we can adjust our laws when it comes to traveling and world sort of issues again because it's a world problem. It's a pandemic, right? That's what it means that it affects
Hmm.
the globe. But there should be some very specific interventions that Nigeria takes that is relevant to its population. The diseases that Nigeria should be focusing on is flu and pneumonia, not COVID-19. They should be developing a flu and pneumonia vaccine, not buying hundreds of million, no, not buying millions
Okay.
of
So let's
right.
take that these numbers are accurate, that there is no wide discrepancy between the way the data is collected in Nigeria versus in the United States. And let's say that, maybe the United States numbers are inflated, but not so inflated that,
Mm.
that that we cannot compare, right? So how should this inform the way in which we go about it? I know you're already talking about that. You say, okay, well, we should have some specific, right? Now we're doing things in a more general way. What kind of side effects, or shall we say unintended consequences, are going to be a result from this, right?
Yeah, so just let's just give more context about US before I answer that question. US had about 66,000 deaths in flu and pneumonia 2018, and COVID apparently 800K. I think that number is inflated, maybe 600K, maybe it's 400. Because if you look at this data here, you can see with underlying condition, even for the 65-year-olds, it's like 1,000 deaths, and then without it's like 26. So you're like, you know what I mean? It's like at least 70% of the deaths are with underlying health conditions, even for the people who are vulnerable, right, in terms of age. So yeah, the numbers are obviously inflated, but still, you can see that COVID for America is far more of a problem than influenza is for America. The number is, it's drastically different. So unintended consequences. I think after this whole event, what will happen in Nigeria and Africa is that they will wake up at some point and analyze all this data that we've been doing in this video and realize that actually they have been approaching things the wrong way. There's going to be smart people, university professors who are going to be thinking, why is it that we're applying solutions to us which are not native to the problems that are affecting us? Why is it that we're just allowing all these world level politics to take effect more than country specific problems and solutions? Of course, we know why they're taking all these COVID. It's because of if they don't, there's going to be embargoes and things, flight bans, etc., from people visiting their countries. So there are reasons why they actually have to comply. But I do believe what will happen is after this, it will allow these African countries to kind of wake up and start thinking more on their regional levels about how to actually solve problems.
Could you possibly steel man the heightened concern? Because
Okay,
to
yeah,
throw
we
out
could.
some crazy things, yeah, like eh, oh, we don't, this is a new kind of, shall we say, bug, and there's something specific about it, that we see a particular rate of very fast rate of this particular set of proteins over here in this corner of the cell replicating in some particular ways, and the fact that it's also a pandemic makes it such that if we let it slip in some particular direction which we are not sure of, blah blah blah. What is the steel manning of the heightened concern?
Yeah, so it being a new disease is, well, that's not true. COVID has been here for decades.
Hmm.
Yeah, this type of virus isn't new. It's a newer type of virus than not other types of
Hmm.
flus, but it's not a new virus. It's been here for a while, actually. However, yes, the way that it attacks is different. The rate of infection is extremely high as well. So but it's not so much higher than a flu. Yes, it is a lot. It is higher than the flu, obviously, but it is still a flu-like type of disease. We don't really know, the extent of how the effects that it's going to have on the heart. For example, this thing has been linked to kind of affecting people's hearts permanently, like damage, damaging the tissues or other
Hmm.
kind of functionings of the heart. Even the vaccine itself has been reported to damaging the heart, right? Because it
Hmm.
mimics the virus. So, of course, it's going to cause some damage. Maybe the damage will be worse without the vaccine on the people that it damages, etc. So, yeah, you should be worried about something that you haven't encountered before. Of course, you should, especially something that evolves. As we already seen, it's already evolved from the first one, the Delta, I believe it's a Delta 2, they called it, and then now the Omicron, the one that apparently came from South Africa, or at least that's where they first discovered it. Of course, the mutations are, of course, a concern, but to be honest, the Omicron seems to be a lot less dangerous than the other ones. So it's
Yeah,
more
it seems
infectious,
like it's
apparently,
safer
but
to
it's less
get
dangerous.
the
Right.
Omicron or the Omicron or whatever.
Yeah.
It's safer to
Because
get it
we,
than to get the vaccine. It's like,
right.
okay,
And, but
get me that
people,
one. And if I can build my immunity based on that and not get any symptoms rather than even get a vaccine. Right?
right. And the thing is, people don't understand is that viruses in general, again, this is a very bad logic I'm going to use here. It's not even logical. It's just it's more anecdotal, but viruses don't want to kill you because flu
Hmm.
viruses, they don't want to kill you because they need you as a host so that they can replicate and survive. So they're not going to evolve to kill you. They're going to usually across generations be a little bit less dangerous, or at least just reach some kind of uh, an agreement with you. We'll only kill this percentage of old people during winter in the cold months or whatever. It's not going to try to be so
Hmm.
brutal because it's not trying to kill you. So
Okay,
the
so the
logic there makes sense.
viruses ends and circumstances are going to conspire to be such that over time it's going to
Hmm.
kill less and less of you. Over time, and all the different mutations that it'll make, it's going to be like, hey, it's best for us not to continue. So
Right.
understood. Let's start winding down now. Any thoughts as to why we see, and this is not the only case, but we see that the body tends not to fight off certain things the older you get, right? And I said, hey, evolutionarily, if you're past a certain your prime, why do we have to expend resources? Now, aging is a big question in and of itself, right? Maybe we'll do another podcast, okay, on aging itself, as to we review the people whom are studying that kind of thing. But
Like
any thoughts
telomeres and
as to what
stuff.
you call the woo stuff?
The woo stuff. Yeah. Oh, okay. So I think that according, at least according to known history, where people have sort of recorded stuff, humans haven't, in general, lived that long. Most humans died from diseases or basically were killed in war before they could reach their agehood, like 50s, 60s, etc. So the body hadn't really evolved to be able to combat things at that point. So meaning we sort of evolved to basically get kind of deteriorate as we get older, and we haven't really been living long enough across history for our bodies to sort of get good at also fighting diseases as we age. It's only been a very small recent history that we can live up to 80 or 75 or even 90. So basically, our bodies never had a chance or time to now find new ways to combat these diseases effectively as they get older. So basically, it's the same body functioning at a much lower efficiency because of course it can't just dedicate all its energy to the white blood cells so that they can function and replication. It has got to think about maintaining your brain capacity so that you're not going crazy. There's so many things that it's fighting with a much reduced energy potential. And think of it just like basic wear and tear. You got this balloon. The more you use it, it becomes a lot less um, it becomes a lot easier to break at much lower tensions and basically load. So that's basically what's happening. So it's got to kind of distribute the load differently than it could before because it just can't deal with it. Now, that's a more mechanical, evolutionary perspective there. The woo thing is, well, your niggas need to die, man. I mean, they've been here too long.
Been here too long, too many dollars, too much attention. Well, a whole lot of attention has been placed on this particular thing, a whole lot of disruption over something that killed how many Nigerians again? Over something that we can see doesn't affect the younger people, and especially in Africa where the population, shall we say, trends lower. Why do we have, shall we say, uniform responses? Okay. And this goes back to the uniform bodies that govern certain responses and the sanctioning that they will do if the response is not uniform, hence leading to your, shall we say, a prediction that some people will have to wake up and kind of break away from this uniformity, and then maybe that'll lessen the likelihood of this the 666 one world government terminator thing happening in a particular way, or which, by the way, leads us back to that point that we do like to fight. We do not like truth or order per se, and I'm talking about human beings now in general, because I think I was having a stream the other day and we were talking about crime, right? And we were making certain logical propositions about what could be possible. Genetically speaking, for example, is it possible that genetics could affect the way in which a particular population reacts, and then it'll reflect itself in the crime statistics, for example? Right now, people are not able to take that kind of information and then remain uncertain about it. People want to, and it's not because this is a difficult thing. I'm just using an example here to show human nature. It's not because it's a difficult thing to just ask a question and then be uncertain about it. It's because emotionally we want to run, and by difficult I mean it's not because it's a very difficult mathematical equation, like, oh my god, it's so hard for me to think. It's like, no. Emotionally, we want to run to the false certainty because false certainty represents a group. Back to that FE culture thing again. We want to run into a group, right? And then say, this is our creed, and those people over there are bad. Let's exercise ourselves over it. And in my view, it's a massive distraction as to why people actually do not. And I don't think people are alive. Okay, if I were to show my hands, I don't think people are actually alive while they're doing this dance. They run into these little cocoons to find false truths and certainties, to fight against other people with their false truths and certainties. Meanwhile, no one is smelling the roses. No one actually knows where they are, and it's a silly little perspective for me to be saying whether they're alive or not. Because
like a simple one is the two different camps. One camp is stating that, no, I shouldn't have to wear masks. Masks are bad. They don't. And then the other side is like, no, masks are great. They work. It's like, they kind of work a little bit. They can statistically improve the global population from reducing chances of X and Y and Z. Or vaccines, vaccines bad. Or the other side is like, it's not safe. They're trying to kill us. It's like, no, not necessarily. The logic you could say is it's only been 2 years since it's been developed.
You think people like the piss and vinegar, to use a British kind of a thing. When you say that, oh no, not necessarily masks, they're like, oh, they don't like that. they actually don't like it. They want to start screaming about something. Okay, and that's just human nature. That's how it is. And maybe that's fine. As a matter of fact, it is fine. It is what we are. But we need to be aware to the degree to which we can understand that it may be messing up certain other priorities that we may want. Maybe we do want to smell the roses and taste the coffee from time to time, and to the degree to which we're busy running into one camp or the other and not smelling the roses, we only have a limited amount of time on this earth. And if you waste the majority of your time doing that thing, you never really lived. Any last words, and then we'll take it out.
Yeah, so South Africa is the only African country, that I found that was similar story to America. Not as crazy, but anyways. is there actually free will? We all have these conversations, but I don't know if people really, all these fatalists, maybe they're right. Maybe things are just set in a certain way in order of the universe. So when they say things like "what will be," or how girls say things like "if it's meant to be, it will be," maybe they're right. Maybe things are set in stone in the universe. So that's it.
That is it, ladies and gentlemen. And with that, we're going to close out this broadcast. And until next time, when we bring you some more in depth analysis that draws a broad, or shall we say, wide swath from the data to the analysis of the data to making projections into what could possibly happen, and then making pit stops along the way to say certain woo things, and then obviously me, stopping to give my, periodic disdain for human beings and in general. That's what some of you come here for, right? You fellow travelers that are disgusted with the whole human project in one way or the other. But until next time, peace. We're gone.